Alright everybody, welcome back to another episode of The World and You. Today's episode focuses on the topic of reparations. When a government violates human and civil rights, they should provide proper apologies and do their best to make reparations to the group they harm. In addition, governments should do their best to prevent such things from happening again in the future. Today, I want to talk to you about how the United States handled reparations in the past with Japanese Americans and the current conversation surrounding African Americans. Today, I will be talking about 5 categories of reparations: restitution, compensation, satisfaction, rehabilitation, and guarantees of non-repetition. Restitution restores individuals to their state before the government violated them. Governments should restore any properties and rights to individuals. Unfortunately, sometimes there are obstacles to overcome, such as when the U.S. government allowed Japanese Americans to return home. Many discovered that their homes had been resold or their landlords refused to house them. In cases like those, governments should provide proper compensations for their property when it cannot be replaced. NCOBRA, or the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparation in America, advocates for restitution in the reform of repairs to Black life in forms of education, land, and work. Compensation refers to the financial economic reparations a government may make for damages resulting from human or civil rights violations. Compensation can be used to provide equivalent values for lost property, damages, or labor. In addition to these concrete values, compensation can also be used for loss of opportunities. In 1992, the U.S. government issued redress payments to Japanese Americans as reparations. In 1865, the federal government promised 40 acres and a mule to freedmen, which was never carried out. Can we provide reparations to the descendants of slaves? The answer is yes. Economist William Darity Jr. argued that compensation should be given to African Americans and Black Americans. The effects of racism in the housing industry, which unfairly refused segregated Black homeowners and potential homeowners. The after effects of slavery, Jim Crow, and other racist attitudes have created a wealth gap, and Darity believes that its elimination should be the goal when providing financial compensation. If governments truly want to make reparations, then they should make it their goal to put all members of the affected party on equal footing with the class which violated human rights in the first place. Satisfaction takes form in public apologies, memorialization, and efforts to not only respect the communities harmed, but also to research the impact of human rights violations. Research and truth-seeking are important because it helps justify reparations. Not everyone agrees that harm was done, or in the case of Black Americans, that we still feel the effects of slavery today. Satisfaction provides physical and recorded apologies. Congressman John Conyers Jr. has introduced a bill, H.R. 40, which would call for the congressional study of slavery and the lingering effects as well as recommendations for appropriate remedies. However, both Democrats and Republicans have refused to approve this bill, which is proof of both America's unwillingness to face its past and how Americans see slavery as distinctly separate from today's current affairs. Rehabilitation encompasses medical, mental, legal, and social care. For Black and African Americans, this may include health resources and job training. Charles Ogletree, the Harvard Law School professor, argues for a program of job training and public works that takes racial justice as its mission, but includes the members of all poor races. Rehabilitation is important because it helps close the gap between the oppressor and the victim. It saves future generations from the trauma that comes from poverty, mental illness, and so forth. Guarantees of non-repetition are proactive institutional measures aimed at preventing future harm. Governments have the power to reform or abolish institutions and laws that previously violated human rights. This category can rely heavily on research that proves what was harmful, especially if volatile institutions and laws are not obvious. It may be easier to see how the except clause in the 13th Amendment has led to modern slave labor, but it may be more difficult for the average citizen to see why America's criminal justice system should be abolished, as N. Cobra declares. Government should also make sure that the committees carrying out these reforms or abolitions are acting in the proper interest of the disenfranchised. Those whose rights were violated should have the power to hold the government accountable if these guarantees are ignored or mishandled. In conclusion, all 5 forms of reparations are needed, and they are inherently interwoven. You need research to back up why we need these reparations. You need proper compensation and education and rehabilitation to help these communities that have been harmed in these ways. It may be hard for a government to admit its wrongdoing, but they are much braver for doing so, and it is their duty to uphold the lives of all and the rights of all their citizens, even when they were the ones who acted as their oppressors. Governments must take aims to correct their mistakes. These reparations may take time to complete, but they are essential, and they must be done in a timely manner. Governments can no longer make excuses for ignoring their crimes. Thank you for today's episode, and I will see y'all next week.